What up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to episode number 44 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you very much for listening. This episode is going to be a random rant episode. And not completely random because I have a few things that I'm planning on covering, but you guys know the drill by now. I'm not going to be focused on any specific free writing pieces. It's not in a short story audiobook. It's not an interview. So it's pretty much just a random rant of a few things. And those things are, as per the description that I wrote here, a couple of YouTube shows that I'm into. And they are Dana White's Lookin for a Fight via the UFC channel. And also Action Bronson's Fuck That's Delicious via the Vice channel. I think I've spoken about both in the past. I'm not positive, but I'm going to in this episode, so if you're interested, stick around for that. Also, I'm going to be speaking about a new character development feature that I'm messing around with on Scrivener. And for those of you that don't know, Scrivener is a writing program that I was introduced to a few months ago. And it was absolutely monumental in being able to format myself and self-publish my first book, which is available in the episode notes. For those of you that are interested, there's a link in there to spuntoday.com/books. I have a little video. It's like a 2-minute video explaining what the book is about, as well as a description and a couple of audio excerpts, which, by the way, those audio excerpts you guys can listen to on here too through this podcast channel. They're sprinkled throughout in between episodes. They're the ones, there's 3 of them as of right now, and they are the ones that do not have episode numbers in front of it. Like this one is episode number 44. There's 3 titles that do not have numbers, and those are the audio excerpts that I'm referring to from that same book. Anyway, point is that Scrivener was monumental in helping me format that book, both the paperback copy and the audiobook version. All of it is very user-friendlyly done through Scrivener. That's not a word, right? And there's mad shit that you could do with it, with Scrivener. I don't know of fucking 100th probably of its capabilities, but I just started messing with a feature for character development for anybody interested in writing novels or anything like that, which I think is pretty dope. And I'm going to speak to you guys a little bit about that. I'm also going to speak about some 2016 election stuff, which, by the way, for those of you fellow New Yorkers out there, the primary in New York, and probably for a few other states too, but for New York, the primary election is April 19th, 2016. Tuesday, April 19th, 2016. So for those of you that think that you have until November to vote for, Hillary and Bernie and Ted Cruz and Trump and stuff like that, you don't. So the only one time that you will have the ability to vote if you're a registered Democrat for and between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders is not this Tuesday, but 2 Tuesdays from now, April 19th, 2016. If you are a registered Democrat, you will be able to vote in the Democratic primary for either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. And same thing for Republicans. If I'm not mistaken, for Republicans, should work the same way. I'm not positive though if they have the same exact primary day or not, but it is primary day, so it would make sense for if you are a registered Republican for you to be able to vote for Donald Trump. Please don't. Or Ted Cruz. Please don't. Just kill yourselves. That would also be April 19th, 2016. So 2 weeks from now. Then that is the primary election. Then whoever you vote for there, for example, if you vote for Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, and Bernie winds up winning, and then he has enough votes, not just popular votes, but the electoral votes. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details of that. Go listen to the How Elections Work episode that I did a few episodes ago. But what you're voting for is who the eventual nominee will be that will go represent the party, whether you're the Democratic or Republican Party, in November. And then in November, you'll be voting for the President of the United States. But now is the time to vote. The only time you'll get to vote, because we're only sending one person in to the election in November. So it's not like November's going to come around and you get to pick between Trump, Cruz, Hillary, and Bernie. You know, the time to choose between them is now, and place your bets, basically. Then I'm going to round off the episode with speaking about the Federal Reserve stress tests, recent ones, because they do them all the time, and the possibility of a deep recession between 2016 and 2019 per Economist and investor John Mouldin. Sounds boring, but it's kind of interesting. To me anyway. So if you're into that type of shit, stick around. And yeah, that's pretty much what the episode is going to be about. Oh, you know what? Separate from all that, some crazy shit happened today on the subway on the way to work. Not that I witnessed personally, but that affected the commute for tons of people. Some of my coworkers, and wound up getting to work late, and also at my girl's job as well. And I had heard, didn't really look into it or anything like that. So take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Because it's like second, third, fourth, fifth hand information. But I did hear that someone fell on the tracks, and it was on the R train, on the R line. And supposedly, and now this is that I heard that from a coworker, so that's why, like, he was late or whatever. And then according to my girl, and I'm not sure where she heard this, so if it's wrong, you guys can all get pissed and blame her for it, but supposedly the part of the person falling on the tracks was corroborated through her story, and she heard that somebody was trying to steal somebody's iPhone or some shit like that, and to get away from the cops, they jumped down onto the tracks, but they hit like that third rail or whatever and got electrocuted and like couldn't move and couldn't get up or whatever. So they had to shut off the electricity in the subway, which affected obviously not just the R train but a bunch of other trains, and that's why there were massive delays to get down into the tracks and like get the person or whatever. And yeah, some sick shit. Welcome to New York City, folks. Stay in your own towns. Boogity, boogity, boogity. No, it's not that bad. And staying with the gloom and doom theme, let's speak about the Federal Reserve a little bit. So, don't worry. It's not like a Jekyll Island Federal Reserve conspiracy theory type of thing that I'm going to get into. It's, I followed this dude online, and he is an economist and an investor. John Mouldin is his name. He came in very close second, supposedly, by the Motley Fool as one of the smartest and savviest investors of 2015. So that's saying a lot. Came in second to Warren Buffett. And he's, by my accounts, which wouldn't take much, but by all intents and purposes, how do you say that? Seems like a very knowledgeable person within that realm. He puts out a weekly newsletter called Thoughts from the Frontline, which you guys, if you're into, Wall Street and global markets and what drives the world economy and that type of shit, I suggest you guys check it out. I recommend it. I read through some of them, not all of them, because it's not like reading an interesting novel or something like that. It's dense but important material, and it's tons of stuff that he puts out for free, and gives pretty ill breakdowns. It's digestible. It's cited. It's sourced, and but it's just like pages and pages of shit. Like he has an open letter to the next president of the United States, which is by now I think a 4 or 5 piece newsletter thing that he's spat out in pieces and with graphs and charts and shit like that. And he breaks down a lot of different regions. In one of them, he broke down South America and went into the economy of a bunch of South American countries and Mexico. And he did the same with Europe. He did it with Asia, and how he connects the dots with how the global economy intertwines with the U.S. economy, and vice versa, and the challenges that the next president of the United States will inevitably have to face, and gives different options and advice, if you will, and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting to read. Again, if you're into stuff like that, and if you're not, then it's probably going to be boring as shit, because I know there's certain quote academic type things like that I couldn't get into if I tried, or if you paid me or whatever. One thing that stood out to me, which I learned a little bit about through a few of his readings of his newsletters, is that the Federal Reserve does something called stress tests. Now, definitely check me out on the facts on some of the stuff here. I just want to introduce the topic to you guys. You guys do obviously your own research and shit like that, just in case I butcher any of this stuff. But the ability for the Fed to do stress tests on big banks was granted via the Dodd-Frank. So the purpose of the stress tests, as I understand them, are to test the solvency of big banks and the markets in general, and how strong we are, or they are rather, and essentially try to foresee and avoid catastrophes like the 2008 collapse that we all went through. And that's one of the seems like common sense type of regulations that were put in place, is giving the Fed the right or the ability to run these stress tests. And they've, as far as I know, have always run these types of stress tests for the markets as a whole. But now they have more. They were granted the ability to be more stringent, I guess, and more intrusive with some of these big banks, which, whatever, in my opinion, they deserve that. But I know a lot of people feel otherwise, and I would catch a lot of flack for that. And, the whole free markets and let them do what they do type of thing. But I don't know, everything in moderation, in my opinion. One of the stress tests that I found most interesting that John Mouldin brought up, which, by the way, the link, there's a link in the episode notes if you guys do want to check out his newsletter. Definitely check it out. It's letters, thoughts from the front line. And one of the stress tests that I felt was worth bringing up was the Fed introducing negative interest rates, or testing that against big banks. And that's a very important takeaway, to understand that just because the Fed runs a stress test, they run a lot of different types for gloom and doom scenarios and great scenarios and everything in between. So their job is to test a whole bunch of shit through their financial modeling, and just because they're testing something doesn't mean that it's in inevitability. But it is within the realm of possibility, I would think. If not, why would they be testing it? So I found it, but that's an important takeaway. So don't take this and say, oh my God, we're going to, definitely go into a recession and the Fed is going to introduce negative interest rates. But I did find it very interesting because interest rates are at or close to zero, which monetary policy dictates that it's supposed to stimulate the purchasing power of the populace, and that's supposed to stimulate the economy and so forth. But that didn't happen, so you can't go below zero in terms of interest rates, or so I thought at least. But through some reading, I see that several European countries and the ECB, being the European Central Bank, and Japan already established a negative interest rate policy. And now that the Fed is toying around with the idea of it, or at least testing through their modeling how the markets would respond to negative interest rates in the system, I was just taken aback by it a little bit and thought it would be interesting to bring up. Now, what would this mean exactly? And what it is picture a retirement fund that, or like your 401k or IRA, that earns less than 0%. Or it could be, CDs, savings accounts in the bank, U.S. bonds, government bonds. So accounts like that, which traditionally pay you interest, for example, your savings account at a bank doesn't pay you pretty much shit, but it pays you like 80 basis points or something like that, like 0.8, depending on the bank, Chase, TD, 0.80% interest on your money, right? Imagine that going to zero and then going below zero, which would mean that you're in essence being taxed for them to hold your money. But then you have, accounts like your CD, which pays a little bit more, and U.S. government bonds, and your retirement accounts, which pay a little bit more as well, that you normally rely on. Now, or under these conditions of negative interest rates, you would be technically being taxed you would technically be paying them to hold your money. And most, one thought is, I'll just take my money out and, keep it under the mattresses or something like that. But that's not practical. Think about, a few $1,000 or something like that is doable, but you're opening up yourself to a slew of other issues like burglary and robberies and stuff like that, because people are expecting, money to be in people's homes. But just think about when you're talking about, big money, like bigger amounts of money, larger sums in terms of like retirement accounts and stuff like that. And people would pretty much be forced into paying that tax, essentially. And it's definitely scary to think, but it's a possible reality. And again, several European countries are already doing this. The ECB, European Central Bank, has established policies having to do with negative interest rate policy, and Japan as well. And Janet Yellen, the Federal Reserve chair, is on record stating that, let me see, she stated that they may favor, this negative interest rate policy may be in favor if the economic situation in the U.S. warranted it. So basically she's saying if shit hit the fan, yes, we would implement this. Which sounds a little scary and nutty, but hopefully is just precautionary measures that are being taken. And don't get me wrong, so let's say shit does hit the fan and something like this is implemented. I'm sure it's not going to be like, you have $100 in your Chase savings account or something like that, and they're going to take out 50 for every 100 that you put in. It's probably going to be an individually insignificant amount, like the interest that you get now currently. Like you get fucking 3 cents for every X amount of dollars that you have in your savings account. It might be, something like that, just in reverse, but it's still a bitch. You know what I mean? And just like the idea of heading in that direction, like, fix the fucking system. Something's off. Something's not working if your trajectory is continuously going in that negative direction. And that's, a lot of people are discouraged with the political process and stuff like that, but the motherfuckers that are in there now are the ones that make these rules. Your vote does fucking count, because somebody's vote counted to get the people that are in power in now. So how does yours count any less? You know what I mean? Will voting for, let's say, a Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton really bring about the necessary revolutionary change that he proposes in his throughout his candidacy? Maybe, maybe not. Like with Obama, for example, there was a ton of hope and change. We got some, much less so than we thought, though, I think is a fair assessment or consensus thought on that. But will voting for the status quo bring about any change? I think absolutely not. So think about that when you head to the polls on April 19th, folks. And but yeah, if you want more on John Mouldin, check out his website. It's Mouldin, and it's spelled Mauldin, economics.com, and the link is in the episode notes. The newsletter of his, again, which again is filled with tons of information that I cannot do justice to, is Thoughts from the Frontline, and I definitely recommend you guys checking it out if you're into that type of shit. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up regarding the elections, one last point, is that there's a slew of different polls out there, right? If you listen to podcasts like 538, they explain how deviation between polls is huge, like Donald Trump would say. Huge. And pollsters are like fucking meteorologists, or some are more than others, I guess. They're like fucking the weatherman. They'll tell you tomorrow it's gonna be between 20 degrees and 88 degrees. So it's like, what the fuck? Do I wear shorts or do I wear my fucking North Face? But that said, and that caveat out there, take this with a grain of salt. Certain recent polls show that Bernie Sanders, it's Bernie beating Republican more than okay. Certain polls show that Hillary versus, let's say, a Trump or a Ted Cruz would win by 1 or 2% margin, whereas Bernie Sanders versus the same Trump or Cruz would win between an 8 and 10% margin. But a lot of people still say that he's not electable. I think that's something that's perpetuated, obviously, throughout the media, which is really fucking scary, by the way. Mainstream media, the way that this election has been covered, and especially certain debates and the outcomes of certain debates. I listen to a lot of the Young Turks, which I think, they have their liberal slant, but they show you or give you all of the content. For example, they'll do like live election, live debate coverage, right? They'll listen and watch the debate as you are and comment on it, etc., and speak, in between on commercial breaks and stuff like that, speak about it. And they show the difference between how, let's say, the next day they'll pull out certain positive talking points from Hillary, negative talking points from Bernie, and that it'll be on newspapers. Hillary, won handily and stuff like that. When it was really like a much closer debate, or there was one debate in particular where Bernie demolished Hillary, like he bodied her. Like, if it was a battle rap, he 3-0'd her. But on the cover of newspapers the next day, it was Hillary stumbled but pulled off the victory in last night's debate, blah, blah, blah. And that's just the political machine behind Hillary. That's just politics at work. But it's scary for just to think of people that just see that and just, they'll go behind it like, oh, Hillary, Hillary, Hillary. And it's fucking scary and it's kind of nutty. And I'm definitely not saying that I don't have my slants and my I'm not seeing everything completely unfiltered and stuff like that. Obviously I am. We all are. Everything we see is coming through the lens of someone. And but if you're just sticking to like Fox News or just sticking to CNN and you're not like reading things on your own or witnessing them in their entirety on your own, or going through like online news publications like Young Turks or Al Jazeera or whatever, then you're that much further removed from the truth. And there's something that I heard recently on Sam Harris's Waking Up podcast. It was the Meat Without Misery episode, which I actually did not agree with. And I'm going to paraphrase this. It could be off, but I remember him saying something to the effect of Republicans are focusing on Hillary because she is the bigger threat, because they, in essence, would just have to convince 51% of the population that Bernie is a communist, which would be easy to do, and that's why they're not even focusing on him and they're just focusing on Hillary. I think that the Republicans are more, maybe even more so worried about Bernie, to the point that they are being dismissive about him because they don't want to give him any attention. Everybody assumes that Hillary is going to be the nominee, and she very well might be, but everyone assumes that she's going to be, and they're going with that. They want that, and that's why they're and if you hear any of the Republican debates, they always speak as if Bernie doesn't exist and as if Hillary has already been the Democratic nominee, and they're saying, when I'll take on Hillary Clinton and this and that and blah, 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 blah. I personally think that they're just pandering to that fact of, wanting it to be Hillary more so than Bernie, because Bernie, like the excitement, if you want to call it that Trump has within the Republican Party and a large amount of voters apparently throughout all these caucuses and primaries that we're seeing the outcomes of, what he has, his main thing that he has going for him, in my opinion, is just the fact that he has that fuck it factor and he has that anti-establishment factor. Bernie has that on the Democratic side, but with a bit more sanity to him. So I think that's a dangerous mix for the Republicans, which why certain polls do show Bernie beating Trump by a margin of 8 to 10%, whereas Hillary would beat him by a margin of 1 to 2%, supposedly. So, whatever. Take all that with the grain of salt, folks. Just like everything else I say. Now, with the possibility, with what we were speaking about before, right, with the Federal Reserve and negative stress tests and stuff like that, and the fact that there's a strong possibility of a deep recession between 2016 and 2019, we need to be very careful and I think very cognizant of who we want manning the ship or womaning the ship when and if that time comes. With how testy the world is lately, both, economically and how plagued we are with wars and terrorism and all the negative shit going on. Our next president, the actions that our next president takes and has to implement, and the hard decisions that they're going to have to make, may very well set the tone and set the stage and set the trajectory of our country for the next couple decades. Strong, important, fundamentally sound decisions will have to be made. So I want to announce my candidacy for the United States. So no, I'm joking. All right, so that's pretty much all the political, geoeconomic, political stuff that I wanted to bore you guys with. Unless I think of anything else a little bit later. Now, to a lighter note, the Scrivener feature that I mentioned in the intro a little while ago. Now, Scrivener is a writing program that I first heard of from Joanna Penn from the Creative Penn podcast, and in an interview that she did with someone who wrote an ebook on how to use Scrivener and stuff like that, and I checked it out. It's a fairly inexpensive program. I figured, it was I want to say $40, 40 or $60, something like that. And I figured, worst case scenario, it'll have a few bells and whistles that Microsoft Word does not have. And, if, that's worst case. So is that worth $40 to $60? Probably not. But according to, all the reviews that I read about it and how, a bunch of authors swear by it and stuff like that, I decided to check it out, and I'm very, very glad that I did. It's like I wouldn't know how to explain. Before, I used to use Microsoft Word, right, exclusively, like to write shit. And obviously I do a lot of freehand writing, but I mean in terms of computer-wise or digitally. And I wouldn't even be able to begin to explain how, and I'm sure fellow writers or creative types may agree with this, some more than others because everybody has a different process, but I wouldn't be able to start to explain how your mind is working and how it's flowing and how it's jumping from one thing to the next when you're in that zone of writing and creating or painting or whatever it is that you're into. And Microsoft Word obviously is it's white sheet of paper, and everything is pretty much, it's kind of linear. Now, Scrivener has that ability, has that feature. It gives you a white blank page. You could type just like you do on Microsoft Word, but you have all this extra other shit too. And sometimes stuff like that turns me off because seems too technical, and I gotta do some HTML coding and shit like that to bring up another page or some crazy shit like that. You know what I mean? That's where my mind goes with when there's too much shit going on sometimes. But it's very not like that. It's very functional. It's very helpful, and it kind of works with that type of mentality, or that type of it gives you that functionality that you need that aids that type of thinking when you're kind of erratic and all over the place while you're writing and you get an idea for a different character, but you're not up to that scene yet in your head, and you have to go in sequence before you lose the flow of the dialogue that you're working on between another two characters and stuff like that. It works with you, and it allows you to pop up other pages and click on a corkboard, and it gives you a dope corkboard view of different things and ideas that you could play around with and move around, and you can literally take one scene and drag it before another screen on the corkboard, and then when you switch to the Microsoft Word looking view, everything is in line with how you just moved it, and you don't have to do cut and paste, and you don't have to do that type of shit. It's really fluid. Fluid is the perfect word to describe it. And the only way to really get it is to just try it and use it. And I was like, fuck it, $40, $60, whatever it is, I'll do it. And the kicker is that, for formatting, which by formatting, I mean, once you write something, let's say you want to produce an actual ebook, you want to put your book out there and, available in a Kindle or something like that. You just can't upload, you could use other services that, you could upload your Microsoft Word doc to, or a PDF or something like that, and they'll format it for you. And some are free and some you have to pay for. But Scrivener does all that shit for you, whether you want to format it into an ebook format with clickable table of contents. If it's a paperback format, then how let's say the left page and the right page, the left page of a book has the gutter on the right hand side, like by the spine of the book, has to be, thicker than the other margin on the other side, and the exact, mirror opposite for the page on the right hand side. Like all that type of shit, it formats it for you. It organizes, does that for you. And just that alone is worth 40 or 60 bucks, whatever the fuck it is. And you have it, once and forever. I saw this really cool feature once on a YouTube Scrivener tutorial that I was watching when I first got it or whatever. Or actually before I got it, because I wanted to see if it's something that I would be interested in. And I didn't use it until now, because I normally write, a lot of the shit that I write is a nonfiction, but I do write some fiction. If you guys check out my short stories at spuntoday.com/short stories, you can see some of them. Anyway, there's one, I thought, short story, which now turned into, it's a novella now, which might eventually expand to a fucking novel, because it's just getting bigger and I'm not through the story yet. And so it could technically be the first novel that I work on. And this feature within Scrivener is super dope for character development. And I'm very visual with certain things, and this is one of those things that has definitely helped me move the story along, because it puts it in a nice visual format that you can actually see. So what it is that it gives you the ability to write a character sheet, I believe it's called. And it pretty much it tells you to point out what the person's role is in the story. Well, it starts off with like character name, then what the person's role is in the story, and which is important to define. So you shouldn't have, or not, you shouldn't do whatever the fuck you want to do, but a lot of authors believe that every person in a story serves a purpose, or every scene or every act serves a particular purpose, and that purpose should be defined, and each plot point or each person or each conversation or each whatever is serving a purpose to move move you from point A to point B, from one plot point to the next. So if you have a person in a story that you just felt like putting in there, but then you try to define what the person's role is in the story, that is an indication there that that's not like a strong character, or that you should develop that character more or whatever, right? So it makes you define that like right from the jump. And what's cool about Scrivener is that you have like the story, but like on the left hand side you have like this margin where you can click on different things, like different tabs, like a research tab, and then you can pull up stuff from the internet and stuff like that and store it in there, or pictures or whatever, and store it in there. And it's all in your research tab, and you can like file a fax your way through it, and then go right back into the story without having to open up multiple screens and like shit like that. It's really visually appealing that way. So then it asks you things like the person's height and their weight, and describe their appearance, which, if you're like me, and I know most all of you are that are into writing in any way, those are things that you visualize, but you don't necessarily write, so and so woke up today and was wearing a black t-shirt with some green and blue pajama pants, and walked to the bathroom and their green flip-flops. You know what I mean? Like, those are certain things that you don't necessarily describe or write about, but you do visualize them. So actually putting certain character traits like this on paper is a method to develop and give depth to your character and give them like a realer feeling. And it goes into other things like mannerisms. And, like with that, I find myself saying, oh yeah, this motherfucker has like a nervous tick, that he's always, has like restless leg syndrome, and he's always like tapping his right leg up and down, up and down. And, like, that's something that I visualize, but never wrote down within this particular story that I'm working on. But it just helps me define the type of character that that person is. You know, it gives that person like a little more realism. And shit like that I feel comes out in the actual story once the story is like said and done. And I want to say the first person that I've always heard of like character development. You should, you know, write a little bit about where your character has come from so that depth, because that depth, it's perceived that depth is perceived rather in the actual story. But it never really sank in or like hit home for me until I saw a documentary that's on YouTube of J.K. Rowling, which is the lady that wrote Harry Potter books, as most of you probably know. And she, in that interview, there's like a moment like towards the end where the interviewer or documentarian asks her, you know, what happened to so and so in the story. And she goes on like a 5 or 10, 15 minute rant about who in the story had kids with each other, and this person broke up with that person because they got married. They had an affair with the next door neighbor, and then they split up. But then their kids wound up going to the same high school, and this person's kid was best friends with that person, who happened to be cousins with so and so, and Dumbledore this and Harry Potter that. And it's like she had these whole elaborate lives made up, like in her head, like they were like, that's the trajectory that their lives went in. Like that's how deeply rooted those characters were and how alive they were for her. And I thought that was so dope and so amazing to have that type of that level of caring about what you're doing, about your craft, to put that level of depth into something. And again, this is a tool within Scrivener that allows you to lay the groundwork for that type of thinking. And my favorite thing, and I'll end it with this, my favorite thing about that is that when you switch to corkboard view, which is pretty much like you can have like index cards for those of you that like writing, you know, plot points on index cards and then filling in between. It allows you to switch to corkboard view, and it gives you like a realistic looking corkboard with thumbtacks and everything. And then each character sheet you can add a picture to them. So the advice was of this one author that uses Scrivener was to use known actors that, you know, or people that fit the description or how you visualize that character to be, and then actually seeing them, like the photo of them for the actual character, helps, you know, bring that story to life for you as you're writing it, and just gives you, again, like another layer of depth into the story. So I have like for one, you know, like a bunch of pictures for different, you know, it could be famous people, you know, DiCaprio, like whatever. If you picture your character as a blonde, blue-eyed fucking dude or whatever, you know, and you can actually, you know, grab pictures from the internet, stick them on there, and say, you know, this is Robert in my story, and he's played by Dylan McDermott. And that's how I visualize him. And then you have all the characters in the story side by side and picture with the description of you know, stuff that they went through in life, like certain important things that you think shaped their personality, as well as, you know, colleges that they went to and stuff that might be insignificant, but that you feel make up that person. And I think that's pretty dope and pretty cool, and it's a very cool feature that you guys should consider trying and working with if that's the type of shit that you're into. Yo, these podcasts fly by when I'm doing them. God damn. Sometimes like I start, I'm like, fuck, I only have like a few things that I want to speak about. And when I look at the fucking clock, it's already been 45 minutes. Either I ramble a lot of unnecessary bullshit, or I'm just underestimating the amount of shit that I had to speak about. All right, so YouTube is the shit, isn't it? Let's wrap it up on a lighter note. YouTube is dope. YouTube is awesome. I love watching YouTube videos, especially now. I really like the direction that it's going in with all these, you know, like individual channels. I guess they always had channels, but I guess, reputable outlets are, finding, YouTube videos profitable enough to not just release certain things that they have on their, TV stations and stuff like that, but to make YouTube only content, which is pretty dope. And two of those shows are the ones that I mentioned in the intro. The first one is Dana White's Lookin for a Fight via the UFC channel on YouTube, which is pretty much Dana White, which is the president of the UFC, along with Matt Serra, who is an ex-UFC champion, retired now, from Long Island. And he is actually, Chris Weidman trains under him out in Long Island under Serra BJJ, under his jiu-jitsu school or whatever. And some other dude called the Tooth, they call him. I forget his real name, but he's missing a tooth, so they call him the Tooth. And it's three dudes that, if you know, for example, like Matt Serra and Dana White's personalities, they're funny Italian, like uber Italian. Well, I don't even know if Dana White's Italian. I don't think he is, but Matt Serra's like Italian, Guinea Italian. And he has that cool, funny Guido personality. And, Dana White has this over-the-top personality also, but seemingly nice dudes that are, very much so about their business in the fight game. And they go pretty much across the country to small fighting venues that exist all throughout the country, in little small nowhere towns and very, very small tiny outfits, some of which I don't even think get sanctioned, just because you see like weird weight differentials between opponents, like too much of a disparity. So it's like, who the fuck sanctioned this fight? Who got paid off to sanction it? Anyway, so they go around these towns, and it could be like in Middle America or like wherever throughout the country, right? They go to different places, and while they're at those places, they also do cool, weird, different shit that they don't normally do, either in New York or Boston, where they're from. So something, for example, is like they went somewhere in the Midwest, and they went they milked a goat, and they went sheep herding. They were in Louisiana. They went those fucking boats that have like a big round fan behind them. They're like in the swamp, and they did that shit, and with fucking finding crocodiles and stuff like that while they were there. They went to Philly, and they went to get cheesesteaks, and to make cheesesteaks at I think it was Geno's. What else? They do stuff like that, like I guess like touristy type shit, but just shit that isn't available or around where they're from, which is pretty cool to see, different shit like that. But they also, go to these small outfits and watch sick fights. Some of them are sick, some of them are just like very, very amateurish. But pretty much if they like someone, they scout them and, offer them a UFC contract. Sage Northcutt, which is up and coming, he was up until his last fight, which he lost. He got choked out too, which, it came out that he had the flu and he was winded and wound up getting choked out, whatever. Whatever, a fight's a fight. You lose. He's this up and coming guy that has, I guess, like a push behind the machine, because he seems like a very marketable looking surfer dude. But that could fight. He was like 9-0 before his last loss, and he's fighting again in one of the upcoming cards. But Sage Northcutt was found in one of these through this show, and he's like a known star. It's not like Biralata, like nobodies or something like that they're picking up. It's pretty cool. It's interesting. Oh, one of the things they did, which I thought was sick, was that they went to, I forgot what town they were in, but they went to I don't know if it was a jail or just like a police precinct or something like that. And they got tased. They wanted to get tased for some reason. I think Dana White wanted to get tased or see what it's like what it feels like to get tased. So all three of them had to do it. And they got tased, and it was nuts to see. They all just instantly drop to the floor and start twitching and shit. That was funny. But yeah, there's a link in the episode notes. Again, it's called Dana White Looking for a Fight on YouTube, and you guys should check it out. Now, the last show that I'm going to speak about, I think I spoke about it before, but Action Bronson's Fuck That's Delicious. I just saw it recently, a few more episodes. Like the first time I stumbled upon it, I remember I binge watched like a whole bunch, and it was dope. I had heard of Action Bronson before, but I didn't even know who he was. You know, I couldn't like tell you any of his songs or anything like that. But I knew he was a rapper. I just didn't know who he was. And he's another dude that I enjoy watching. And he's from Queens, which is dope. And I enjoy his show. And he's a chef who pretty much broke his leg or something like that. And was he a chef first or a rapper first? I think he was always a rapper, and then he broke his leg, so he couldn't rap for a while. Then he got into cooking and became a real live chef, and really into cooking, and then continued rapping after that, or vice versa, some shit like that. There's some sort of, like, he broke his leg and he had to do the other thing, whatever it was. And Vice picked up a show of his, or Vice is putting out the show called Fuck That's Delicious, and he pretty much goes around to different places, different spots, and eats good food, or seemingly good food, and tries to put you on to food in different places. And I like when he does, when he goes through like stops in Queens, like Eddie's Sweet Shop on Metropolitan, which is a dope spot I've been to a couple times. Great ice cream. And it's like it's a staple in the neighborhood. It's been around, I think, for over 100 years, passed down from generation to generation type of joint. And they have the original cash register that they've always had, and a lot of the decor seems to be the same because it looks old as fuck. But the ice cream is it's like homemade ice cream. It's really good. They give you tons of it, and it's like a sit down ice cream place you go to, and you know, sit down like you would at a restaurant and just eat fucking sundaes and different milkshakes and like stuff like that. He went to like a place in the city called Italy, which is actually right by my old college, Baruch, and on like 23rd or 24th or something like that. And I always thought that place was I know it was huge, but I always thought it was just like a Whole Foods or like supermarket or something like that. But it's called Italy, with EAT, Italy, but EAT in front of it. But it has, you know, you could eat there also. It's like a restaurant in there. It has like a beer garden on the second floor. It's like really big, and it has like imported authentic pastas and cheeses and meats and stuff like that. It seems interesting. Much more interesting now. What else? Like, he goes down south and eats soul food, but like he does stuff like that. But then he'll also go to White Castle and get fucking White Castle sliders and stack them up in a certain way, and it's just funny. And he went to his aunt's house and they made Armenian traditional baklava. Not Armenian. What is he? Yeah, Armenian. His cousin Body, I thought was annoying as fuck, but he grew on me, and he's really funny dude also. And I just love that they big up Queens a lot, you know, Brooklyn, a lot of like neighborhood, Hemlock, Fulton, like areas that I know, you know what I mean, and that I've been to and that I live like close by. It's pretty cool to see. So Definitely check that out. It's called Action Bronson's Fuck That's Delicious via the Vice channel. And I think you guys will enjoy that also. And again, there's a link in the episode notes to one of those episodes. And you know the way YouTube works, once you open up one episode, you see a whole bunch of the other ones up on the right hand side. And that's pretty much it, folks. That is the episode for this week, episode number 44 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you again very much for listening. I really appreciate it. I definitely want you guys to check out my newsletter. Sign up for it at spuntoday.com/subscribe. I put out the first of its kind this week on Monday, a couple days ago. It's called the Midday Monday Boost Letter. Midday Monday Boost Letter. And you get it every Monday at noon, midday, 12 p.m. If you're interested. And what it is it's modeled after Tim Ferriss's 5 Bullet Friday, which I thought was dope. I think it is dope. I enjoy getting his weekly newsletter. And, his is 5 bullet points of, different things that he's into, whether it's a song. He has a quote on there also, which I borrowed that as well because I'm into quotes. What else does he have? He has like recent purchases, stuff that he bought recently that he likes, that he's feeling. And I pretty much modeled it after that, a quick weekly newsletter where I can share certain things that resonated with me for that past week and things that I'm into. So you guys know that I'm into photography. So what this Midday Monday Boost Letter, and I want to do it on a Monday to not completely bite off of Tim's 5 Bullet Friday idea, but to kind of set up, give a little boost to the week, motivate you and myself, by doing this, to have a better, more positive week. And this is what it includes: a photo of the week, which is just, a dope random photo that I see on either Instagram or Twitter or wherever. And this one happened to be one that I was looking at photos from the Hubble telescope. And there was a sick photo that it took of it. They called it Mystic Mountain, of some galaxy far, far away, whatever. You guys could check it out if you're interested. Then you get a photo of the week. That's the first thing you'll see. You get a podcast of the week. It's just a dope podcast. I listen to tons and tons and tons of podcasts, like literally a sickening amount of podcasts. There's dozens of different podcasts that I listen to. So some of them I really enjoy, and it may not be, the regular, Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, NPR podcasts or whatever that you may be accustomed to. There's some obscure ones that I listen to, and sometimes they're dope episodes. So I just tell you what episode it is and share the links with you guys. And if you're interested, you can check it out. Then I also share a video of the week. This could be, a 2-minute video, a 3-minute video, or like last week I shared a rap battle, which was a really dope battle between Iron Solomon and Disaster, which I thought was really cool. And I share that. And then I have a quote of the week, which is just a dope quote that resonated with me. And this past week, the quote was, "Do your thinking independently. Be the chess player, not the chess piece." And that's by Ralph Sherrill. And last but not least is a word of the week. I like words. Everything is words. Writing is words. Songs are words. Movies are words. Everything is words. Communication is words. So I've always had a habit of just writing down dope words that I hear that I'm like, oh, what does that mean? And I look up the meaning of it and I like it, or I just like the way it sounds or whatever. So, for example, this past week, the word was obfuscate. Obfuscate, which means to render obscure, unclear, or unintelligible. Obfuscate. So expand your vocabulary, folks, like I'm trying to. So yeah, sign up for the newsletter at spuntoday.com/subscribe, and you'll get this email once a week, It's just those 5 things will be in it. And if it's something that you think you might like, check it out. Please subscribe to it. As always, you can support the podcast by going to spuntoday.com/affiliate links and shopping using my Amazon banner or the iTunes banner and just doing your shopping like normal, and that'll help out a lot. The main way that you can help support the podcast is to rate and review it on iTunes and or Stitcher or your favorite podcatcher. I would really appreciate it if you did that. Follow me on all social media at Spun Today. Check out my book that I mentioned earlier. It's called Make Way for You, Tips for Getting Out of Your Own Way. It's pretty much a collection of self-motivating thoughts and ideas that helped kick me in my own ass to write that book, basically, and to actually want to pursue writing in a more serious way and less of a whimsical kind of I'll write whenever I feel like writing type of thing. Just I don't know, make it more of a concrete goal, more of a full-time hobby, if you will. You can check that out at spuntoday.com/books, and it is available via Kindle or a paperback copy if you want to order one on Amazon. And for anyone who can't afford it for whatever reason, it's like $3 for the digital copy and $7 for the paperback copy. But for anyone who can't afford it for whatever reason, at the bottom of the page, spuntoday.com/books, there's an option to request a free PDF copy of it. And it's not a sample or anything like that. It's the full book, but it's in PDF form. It's not going to be, have the functionality of a Kindle where you can, click on different table of contents tabs and go to different pages and bookmark shit and highlight stuff and stuff like that. It's going to be like a straight PDF, but it's free, so you can't bitch about that. If you want one, just hit me up through there and I will gladly send you a copy. And hopefully it helps motivate you the same way it helped motivate me. And that's pretty much it, folks. That's the episode again, episode number 44 of the Spun Today podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. And as always, substitute the mysticism with hard work and start taking steps in the general direction of your dreams. Thanks for listening.